what is real home, you know. But everybody knows there's a special connection with home. Whether if you're a homeless person or not, you know, you have a special connection with home. As a spirit soul, my roots, if you will, or where I came from, my home, is in the spiritual world. That's my origin, if you will. That's where I came from. And until I go back there, I don't really feel at home. You can't feel at home in this temporary world. You can't.
Hi, my name is Ruben, and this is the Breaking Trail podcast. We are on the first episode of this new year, so in this talk we're gonna speak about finding home, and home meaning that place where I have shelter, no problems, no worries, and that place does exist, and our longing for that proves that. So this is a podcast where you learn to navigate life's journey through ancient wisdom, and you'll, more than me, you'll meet my friend and teacher Balakhilya, and through our conversation hopefully have more inspiration and a more positive outlook on the new year of 2022. Okay. I just hope it's gonna be good. I hope it's gonna be okay.
Don't touch anything.
No, exactly. I just take away my hands and just hope for the best. Oh, yeah, but it's good to see you. It's, you know, it was long ago. Like last week we didn't do anything. So.
Yeah, it's been a long time. You've been around the world and back.
Yeah, almost. Oh, yeah. No, but I did go on a mountain.
How was everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, how was it? Good? I'm sure it was good. They're all good.
So good. And that's from the mountain trip. That's where my idea of this talk came as well. Because I don't know why, especially.
Your idea.
Idea for the talk of this podcast. Well, but with this feeling of that I don't know if you felt the same. It's just it's something that I have quite often, especially, or every now and then, especially when I see snowy mountaintops. I just feel like a strong longing or desire or urge in me to just like get away. Like you feel this is not my home, and you just like you're looking at that and you're thinking, no, kind of like my t-shirt says that the mountains are calling and I must go. It's that feeling. It's just. Yeah.
You know, I actually read in scripture, and don't ask me what scripture because I don't know, I can't remember, but years ago, that longing feeling that you just described is actually the soul's longing for Vrindavan. It remembers on the soul level being in Vrindavan, and when you see those beautiful nature scenes and you feel like that, that's actually reminding you of home. I read that in scripture.
Wow.
So that's a reality.
Yeah, and that longing is itself a proof that such a place exists. You know what I mean? That obviously you wouldn't have such a longing if a home didn't exist.
Yeah. You know, there's that saying, you can't long for or desire that which does not exist.
Yeah.
So everything that we have in that category it does exist. Like you want true love, it does exist. But in this world, it doesn't exist. So that means all of these realities are in another world, not this world. But because we want the perfect place, the perfect love, the perfect person, you know, the home where we're loved and secure, and is an indication that it does exist.
No.
And the frustration is when we don't find it.
Yeah.
Then we just give up and say there's no such thing, you know. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as love. There's no such thing as the perfect person. There's no such thing as truth, etc.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's just like saying there's no such thing as gold because you've looked for gold your whole life and never found any. So you say, well, gold doesn't really exist. It's just in the books, or it's just somebody's imagination. Somebody created that idea that there's gold. But I've looked my whole life and I didn't find it, so therefore I give up.
And I guess it makes it easier to handle it in some way, because then, you know, obviously if you imagine that it doesn't exist, then, you know, there's no point in looking for it. Like you're good where you are. You don't have to be somewhere else. Like there's no change needed. There's no process needed. You are where you should be. You just have to deal with those hard feelings in some other way, you know, than actually pursuing a search for that which you're longing for.
Yeah. It's the cop out, you know, it's the easy way out, because people in ignorance, nobody gives them information about, you know, the real life and world and all the things that go with that. And so they know it intuitively, but they can't, you know, put that into practice, so to speak, so they just give up. It's just a fantasy. It's just an imagination. It's just an unachievable reality. So that's why we need knowledge. That's why we need this absolute truth.
Yeah.
And have the faith to accept it as absolutely true. You know, going beyond all the doubts and skepticism, etc., because that's there in the beginning and that gets in the way, you know. But why does a person go back again and again to, you know, the arena of love after so many failures and so many disappointments? And, you know, if it's not a necessary part of life, why do you keep returning to that? And you vow to give it up, and you make declarations, I'll never do that again, and et cetera, et cetera. And you just jump back in.
Yeah. So obviously there's something there.
Because you can't not. You have to, because that's who you are. That's your intrinsic nature.
Yeah.
The love is intrinsic, and that's what we need. That's the missing ingredient, because that's the basis and elixir of life. And so we're driven toward that. And people will say, well, it's just a bodily thing. It's just sexual attraction, and on and on. You know, the rationalizations go, and it's not real, and, you know, it's temporary, and it's so painful at death, and whatever. They can have all their arguments and so on. But the point is, if you know the truth, you know we are not the body. We're not anything to do with the body and all its, you know, material attractions, and what we call love is not real love. We know all that from Scripture. We know all that from, you know, our spiritual masters. See, so we can take their arguments and understand, well, yes, you have that argument because you don't know these truths. But if you know and accept these truths, and to know a truth, you have to accept it. I mean, you can hear a truth and not accept it, but to know a truth, you have to accept it as true. Yeah. So when a person comes to that stage of development and they accept these spiritual truths, then it explains all the things that go on in life and why it's, you know, driving us, and why it's like that, and why we're disappointed, and why the temporary nature of this world and the love connected with this world is so frustrating and so unfulfilling, and et cetera. So it gives you a true perspective on whatever the subject is, whether it's love, or I think we were going to talk today about home. Where is home?
Yeah.
You know, what is real home? But everybody knows there's a special connection with home. Whether if you're a homeless person or not, you have a special connection with home. And, it's an interesting story that just occurred last few days. A friend of mine in England wrote me this long account of his father's leaving his body. And I'll condense it down to a shorter version, but his father was elderly, and I don't know what condition he had, but somehow he had an acute situation and very serious. And so the night before, eventually they called the ambulance, but before they called the ambulance, it was in the night, he was pretty incoherent, and everything was kind of like unclear and etc. But he had a moment of clarity. And his wife was there, and he told his wife, in a moment of that moment of clarity, the game is over. I'm going home now.
Wow.
And then he went back into this confused state. Ambulance came, took him to the hospital. And by the time he got to the hospital, or shortly thereafter, he kind of was unconscious, etc. And so he never regained consciousness. But his son, my friend, went to the hospital and, understood the situation because he's been trained by a spiritual master. His long history of studying and practicing these teachings. So he knew that it's time now to give his father, the person who played the role of his father in this particular life, the best opportunity he could to really go home, his spiritual home. So he chanted, played chanting on his phone, talked to his father, about what was going on and who he was, et cetera, and, the father's, labored breathing calmed down, and he became more peaceful, and then 15 minutes later, he left his body, And so the point is, his father wasn't a religious person as far as I understand. It's not like he, was in that realm of life. Yeah. He just knew intuitively, okay, the game's over. I'm going home now. So where did he get that from?
Yeah.
And it came from internal. It wasn't like he was, reading it in a book or something. It's just like an immediate, automatic revelation of truth appeared, and that's what he understood.
Wow.
So I thought that was quite interesting, especially in connection with our topic of going home.
And that must have been, I guess, some sort of comfort for him as well. I don't know if he could hold on to that, but knowing that's just a transition, like I'm going home now.
Well, yeah, it didn't seem like he was panicky. I mean, from what I read and heard in the account, it wasn't like he was panicking. It was just like, okay, he's telling his wife, okay, the game's over. I'm going home now. And he wasn't clinging to something, it didn't sound like. It's just, okay, let's go. It's time. The game's over. The game of life, the game of, all this stuff that I've been playing for this lifetime, and of course, many more previous, but it's over. And he was going to leave his body. So there you go. Where did that come from? From an internal knowing. So all these realizations that come in intense moments like that are not coming from book learning, and they're not coming from, being briefed on this. It's just like, this is reality.
Yeah.
And so it's...
Well, and that's...
It's, again, for those who want to see it, some proof. I mean, again, you could naysay it and, put it down as to being just a product of the stress of the mind and whatever. But for those who know the truth, you can see real value here.
Wow.
So it's
because that's similar in a way to what I experience every now and then when I'm in the mountains that I was telling you about. Like that, it's not something that's coming from the mind. It's not. I have no reason to like feel that way. Like I'm in really nice natural setting. Everything is good. Like I'm relaxed. I'm being recharged. I'm where like immaterially in the optimal place for me, like the best place for me to be. But still, there's that really intense feeling of, wow, this is not my home. Like I'm longing to there, and I see this mountain and I'm thinking that's where it is, but I never get there. Like you search it and you can walk, but in this world you can never get to that place. And it's
right, right. And kind of connected with that is, and often it takes place in nature, beautiful settings, that kind of feeling. But also another feeling like, I've been here before. And you haven't been there before, But we've been there, meaning our real home, before, which is, if you, have information from our revealed Vedic scriptures about the spiritual world, and especially Goloka Vrindavan, where, the Supreme Lord in his original feature is, and that's his eternal home. It's just all about nature. It's all about beautiful nature and flowers and lakes and swans and companionship with closest friends of all friends, and, the enjoyment of being together and the camaraderie and all of that, is, part of our home. That's our real society, our real home, our real, beginning. That's the roots.
Wow.
And so you kind of sometimes experience maybe just a flickering moment or flash of that in nature.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
It feels right. It's something that affects me more than anything else.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. And so when you kind of have additional information about our origin, our real home, which is, our spiritual beginning, that's a difficult situation because we don't have a beginning, we're eternal, but where we were before we came into this material world, then it all kind of starts, fitting together. And where does that feeling come from? And what is that indicative of? And why is it that here, even though I feel like that, I can't really achieve the perfection of that? Yeah. I can go to the mountains every day for, this whole life, and it's so wonderful and it's so complete, but it's not complete. Yeah. It's attractive, but it's just attracting me to something that I can't grasp, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why I have to keep searching and keep going, and another adventure and another.
Exactly.
Travel the globe looking for another place to be that I haven't been before, and a new exciting, stimulating event and et cetera. Because it's not complete. It's the mock-up. It's the, just the facade. It's the theatrical set, or however you want to look at it. But it's not the real thing.
Well, but that's an interesting point. Like, so we think that this material world is the real thing and everything else is fake. When some spiritual leaders are talking about, heaven or they're speaking about some higher truths, people see that as the illusion or not real. Like they're just making up a world, you know, they because they want to believe in something, but actually it's the other way around. Like the material world is sort of the fake thing, and the spiritual world is the real thing. So we've twisted it around.
That's right. Yeah, because everything in the material world, including our consciousness, is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It's the mirror image, but it's upside down. When you mirror an image, everything gets backwards. And so we're living in the mirrored backwards, upside down image, but we don't know that it's just a reflection of the real world. So what we see in the mirror is a reflection of the real object. Yeah. Every day we look in the mirror. And we know we're not the man in the mirror. What did Michael Jackson have that song, I'm talking to the man in the mirror?
Yeah.
I mean, he had a song like that. And
talking to the man in the mirror. Yeah.
Yeah. So we look in the mirror, but we know that's not me. I'm out here looking at this reflection. But if I'm in illusion, I think I am the man in the mirror. Mm. See, I can't see myself. I just see the man in the mirror. That's why I'm talking, you know, or whatever. So the reality of the material world is it's an illusion. It's real in the fact that it's material energy. It's here. We have our material bodies. We have our material identities, you know, but it's all temporary, and it's not the world that satisfies me and makes me truly happy, and where I can find a permanent residence, you know. And which it brings up another point. You know, as we talk, more points come up. But I've had very close friends, you know, that were military kids. They grew up in a military family. Mm-hmm. And it's basically all the stories are the same. Their dad in the military was transferred from one place to another place to another place. And so they lived in so many different places that they never felt like they really had a permanent home. Mm. They knew everywhere we go, this is not really going to last very long, because in a year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it is, we're going to move to another place and another school and another group of friends and another whole situation. And when I get there, I know, well, this is just temporary also, because history repeats itself. And so they never, where are you from? Well, I'm from everywhere. You know, I was from California. I was in, you know, from Oregon. I was from, you know, another country. We spent time in France or wherever it was, you know. No. And so where are you from? Well, I'm not from anywhere. That's their feeling. You know, I never really had a permanent home. No. And so that's the reality of us in the material world. Where are you from? Well, I'm from this place, that place, another place. But of course, you know, we're always hoping for that permanent home. That's why it was so disturbing for the kids that grew up in these military families. Yeah. They never had a permanent situation that they could count on. Yeah. You know, just as I make good friends and I get settled in, and, you know, everything is you know, what I want it to be, or it's good enough for now. It gets ripped out from under me, and I'm in another place.
Exactly.
And like I said, another school, another group of friends, and I got to enter into that and make friends and establish myself. And, you know, I'm the new kid on the block, and everybody's got their whole settled situation, and I'm trying to become a part of that, and they kind of, you know, ostracize me, or I'm not in the clique, and you know, I have to work my way in and prove myself, and all those things that are realities of society are disturbing, and so it puts an added stress on the lack of a permanent situation.
And you end up being like
And
without
now
roots and without a stable
Roots. Where's
like you.
and many people, feel like that. Well, where's my roots? And I don't know if it's still going on. I don't hear much about it anymore. But there was a time back in the 70s and 80s where there was a lot of emphasis put on return to your roots, find out where your roots are. Study your genealogical tree and where your parents were from and where their parents were from and follow it back. And okay, so maybe your roots are in Ireland. And you want to go to Ireland to find your real roots, where it all came from, where it all started before, there was that mass migration to America and the New World. And, but before that, your roots were, where it all started from was in Ireland. So you go back there and you want to find out where your parents really are, grandparents or whatever, your ancestors, where it all started. Anywhere people were looking for their roots. That was some kind of security for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some kind of permanence.
Yeah.
And so, all of this is indicative of what we were talking about nature and stuff. That this world's not our home, and we're trying to find our roots, but these are just temporary, journeys back in history. It doesn't really give us a true understanding of our roots. So we have to always go back to that truth that I'm spirit soul. I'm not this material body, And as a spirit soul, my roots, if you will, or where I came from, my home, is in the spiritual world. That's my origin, if you will. That's where I came from. And until I go back there, I don't really feel at home. You can't feel at home in this temporary world. You can't. Just like the military kid never felt at home anywhere, but you take that on a lifelong basis. Okay, so you have this permanent life. You grew up here, you're raised here, you went to school here, you went to university here, you married here, you had your kids here, et cetera, et cetera. But boom.
Yeah, it changes.
Old age and death, and it's all over again. And you got to start all over. So you never really found that.
And maybe it's better to break that illusion earlier. These kids, I'm not saying, obviously they have difficulties maybe from the rootlessness, but at least they have that feeling. Yeah, there is no stable situation in this world. And you can... Yeah, you can take a negative and turn it into a positive. But we need knowledge, you see. You can just be confused and bewildered and speculative lifetime after lifetime. Yeah.
There's no real concrete understanding. You can come to conclusion, you go, well, maybe I'm right or maybe I'm not. But there's always, because it's my conclusion. Is my conclusion correct? And then something occurs that, makes me doubt my conclusion or my conviction, et cetera, et cetera. But when we have this absolute knowledge, which we always refer to, and we have the faith and the vision to accept that as truth, then all those doubts and all those confusions are replaced with this knowledge. Now I understand it. Yes, I'm spirit soul. My eternal home is in the spiritual world. And I want to get back to my roots. That's my roots. I'm longing for home. That's my home, And home is a very special place.
Yeah.
You can ask anybody where they're from, and usually they'll go back to where they kind of started this lifetime.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm from, like me, for instance. Where are you from? Well, I'm from United States. But where? Well, I was North Carolina. That's where I was born and raised. But where? Okay, and then you give the city, Hillsborough, and it always goes back to basically you feel like your home is where you started, where it all started from.
Yeah. This life.
So if you take that analogy and apply it on the spiritual, absolute, eternal scale, it's the same. Where are you from? The spiritual world, et cetera, et cetera. Where's your home? In Vrindavan or whatever. and that's...
and I have all these friends from Sweden. I was born in quite a small city, and I have all these friends that, when they grow up and when they get kids, they because they always say they're not going to return to that city ever. But when they start to plan to have kids, and they actually, they return seeking the roots, seeking their safe, comfortable place that they know. That is like the most home to them that they know, and they.
And it feels like home.
Yeah. Mm. To whatever degree, like a home can feel like a true home in this material world, like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're always going to feel like you're from Sweden in this lifetime with this situation. You're not going to feel like you're from somewhere else because that's where this lifetime started.
Yeah.
And it's another thing connected with home. There's a saying which I've heard from early childhood. Home is where the heart is.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So your heart was with, your mom and your dad, and that's where the original love was, and that's where you felt like you were loved and you were wanted and so on.
That's true.
If that was, you're lucky enough to have had such a situation, and so your heart is always there. My heart is where that experience of life was.
Not the place really, but the relationships.
Yeah. And when you lose your parents, like your father and your mother, you feel like, well, really, there's no reason to go there now. As much as there was a pull to go there before. Now it's like, well, all my loved ones are gone. Mom's gone, dad's gone, my uncles and aunts and, all those people that made that place so special. Well, they're not there anymore. So I go back and now it's kind of like just a place, and all the memories are there and everything, but the love is not there because the heart is missing that. So, there's so many facets to this subject that point to the same thing.
But all that is, just this thought came into my mind, or this feeling that, wow, but then it's, so if I am to find that real home, then I have to go to the heart level. That's where it's at. The change is needed, right. And the path is a path of the heart, a change of heart, which is a hard thing. It's There's so many different things that just come to mind. That point we're going to come back to. Don't let that point get away. But the more frivolous ideas of home. There was this other saying, home is where you hang your hat. Yeah.
People that travel all the time. Okay, you come into a place, wherever it is, hang your hat up. Okay, this is home now.
Yeah.
So that's another whole shallow understanding. And I just got a new cap for hiking. You know, it's kind of a ventilated summer cap. You know, and so the company that makes it is called Summer Days or Sundays. I forget now, but anyway, they said our philosophy is home is under your hat. Because they make hats. That's what their product is. They make hats. And they say, for us, home is under your hat. So we want you to have the best home. So they make the best hats. This was that idea. You know. But really getting back to but home is such a word that you can't deny the power of that word home.
No.
You know, the black community, you know, they started it. Now it's been spread around. A lot of people kind of use this as a slang word, but they called each other who were maybe from the same neighborhood. They call it the hood. You know, they call them their homies. Oh, these are my homies. You know, hey, homie. You know, that's the way they address each other because we're kind of from the same place, the same, you know, background, the same way of thinking and the same whole trip, let's say. And so they feel like that's the connection. That's my homie, you know. So it's still play on the same word. You know, there's a special significance to that word home. It's not just some flighty thing, you know. And it has so many levels, you know, so many layers of depth.
Yeah, just a point that came to my mind when you were speaking about this hanging your hat. That's how, I guess I was also thinking before, because I've always been traveling a lot. So my feeling has been like, okay, so wherever I travel, I just make that my home. Like I you know, find my stability in the traveling. I find my stability in the journey and the whatever is there for me right now, so to speak.
Yeah. But it doesn't. There's a certain thing that doesn't satisfy. That is why you were just revealing your feelings in the mountains.
Yeah.
But I can't.
Trying to
get my
grasp it.
Hands, I can't get my fingers. I can't grasp it.
Slipping through your fingers, you know, like sand is just.
Yeah. So, you know, if we hopefully haven't misdirected anybody or confused people, but we do have a real home, and that's the spiritual world, you know, and we do have a perfect person, you know, our original Father, the Supreme Lord, you know, that is where the love is. And you know, that's an eternal love. And it doesn't disappear after X number of years due to, you know, the death of the body or, you know, it's not, you know, somehow fleeting or whatever. And it's absolutely fulfilling. It's not just enough love to kind of give me a taste, but it's fulfilling. But at the same time, is an ever longing for more. You know, it's fulfilling, but it's not fulfilling. It seems like a contradiction. Because even the loves of this world, there's so much there, and they're so fulfilling, and it's so wonderful, but I want more.
Yeah.
Well, that's again coming from the reality of the spiritual world, because love has no end. Love has, it's fathomless. It's not like you reach the bottom. You know that word fathomless?
Yeah.
You know, a fathom is a measurement of depth in the ocean.
Oh, I never knew that. I was wondering why fathom.
Yeah, they, you know, on the sea, when, you know, they're calculating the depth of the water, they show it's 6 fathoms or 8 fathoms, and I forgot how many feet or how many meters a fathom is. I've forgotten. But I was in the Coast Guard, and they always were measuring, oh, this is 3 fathoms. So that's why they use that term, fathomless, meaning you can't reach the bottom. You know, it's so deep, there's no bottom. It's fathomless. And so that has been used to you know, describe many things that are beyond, you know, finding the end of it. So the spiritual world, which is the world of love is fathomless. You know, it doesn't have an end. It's ever increasing. And it said the Supreme Lord Krishna, you know, his love is ever increasing. So he himself doesn't know the end of it. So it's so wonderful that it's satisfying, but at the same time, but there's more. There's more.
It reminds me of the story. I think it's from the Bible originally, of this father who has two children, and one of them is really close to him all the time. One of them is, after, you know, some time in the kingdom, he goes on his own and eventually loses all his money, you know, on the street. He's poor, but the father he comes back and he sees that the father is, you know, he was just waiting there all the time for his son to come back, never condemning, never. And then when he comes back, and that's the part I love the most, is like he has this big, I don't know, maybe that's not a part of the Bible, or maybe that's just my adding something to it.
It's the prodigal.
Yeah, oh, it is.
No, it's the prodigal son.
But he's
it's the prodigal son.
And he has this big, like, let's call it a party when he comes home, like a big love festival, like a big celebration of his son.
He sees him coming from a distance, and he's waiting with open arms, and takes him and hugs him, and you know, I'm so happy you've returned. Wow. But the son was feeling like very, very incorrect in his behavior, we'll just say it like that. That he left, he took his inheritance early, he went out, turned his back on his father and brother and family, and just went out to enjoy his life independently, and spent all his money on wine, women, and song. And he had many, many friends, and when the money ran out, all his friends disappeared, and he was so poor that he had to feed the pigs. You know, that was how he, you know, survived. And he was so hungry that he was eating the slop that he was feeding the pigs. And he started thinking, man, this is crazy. You know, I'm the son of this great landlord, and you know, the most menial servants in my father's kingdom, they have a much, much better life than I do, and I'm the son. And so he decided, you know, that he'd made a big mistake. And so he decided to go home. And he went home. And he was thinking, my father's just going to reject me because of what I've done. You know, and he didn't go home like, here I am, your son. He went home to just take up the lowest position he could have in his father's kingdom. It's just the most menial servant. Wow. And his father, as you described, was waiting with arms and just grabbed him. And, you know, a festival of love. Where have you been? I've been waiting so long. You know, my heart has been, you know, with you the whole time. And he said, no, I'm not qualified to be your son. I just want to be your son. No, you're my son, you know. And so that's the reality of the Lord. You know, we're all his children, and he's there waiting for us to give up our fantasies of, I can be happy independently. I don't need God. I don't need this spiritual stuff. I'm self-sufficient. This world is my home, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And when a person finally, and for this prodigal son, he had to go to the lowest level to realize what he was missing, what he had done, how much a mistake he'd made. And sometimes we also have to go to that lowest level, you know. Wow. But luckily, he remembered. You see, he remembered. He didn't forget where he came from. We forget. This is another point.
Yeah.
You see, We don't remember. We don't remember the spiritual world. We don't remember the Lord, our all-loving, merciful Father. We don't remember any of that.
Nope.
And so we're just like if the prodigal son had amnesia, he would have been stuck with the pigs. He didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
But we have access because, this was a story, to illustrate, the point. But we have the Lord giving us information about him in the scriptures and via his wonderful representatives, the spiritual masters, and the great sages and saints and masters of the past who have revealed all this truth to us.
Exactly.
And told us these things and encouraged us to join them in the Lord's world, you see, to go back, to return home.
Because I've had people...
They call it...
Yeah, no.
Go ahead.
I just heard people saying, like, why do we need... If you have the wisdom within you, then why do we need these... Like, why do you need anything else? Why do you need that? But then that's the reason, because we forgot it. It's there, but we
forgot. We're covered. Basically, we've got amnesia. If you've got amnesia and you forgot everything, you forget everything. Can you imagine?
Mm.
You forget your mother, your father, where you came from, your name. You forget everything. And there's no way you're going to be able to just sit down and, wrinkle the brow and bring it back, according to what I understand about the disease.
Exactly.
You need somebody to come to you and tell you who you are. Your name is this. Your mother and father are so-and-so. You came from this place. Your education is this. And you need to be taught again.
Exactly.
This truth.
Yeah, and usually when people have that, like when people have amnesia and they do have that, then they start ringing a bell. People start like, oh yeah, but that's true. I remember that now when you say that, or the smell. They have some smell and they're like, oh yeah, they're rebuilding their identity.
Yeah. So back to the ideas of these feelings and these, little things that come up that kind of remind us. And when you've got this truth, then you can start connecting it. Like my friend's father, the game's over. I'm going home now. But he hadn't been taught any of these details of where home is and what it really is, and et cetera, But we have access to this, in our bhakti yoga process, and it's clearly laid out by many different representatives of the Lord, not just one who says this, and you got, I only believe. But you take scripture from different individuals that have presented these teachings from different time periods and different locations, et cetera, and it's all the same, whether it's Jesus 2,000 years ago or Krishna and his associates, when he spoke Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago, or whether it's Lord Gauranga and the Goswamis, etc., 500 years ago. Each one is saying the same thing.
And
it's like the truth is the same.
And that thing is exactly like, to come back to what you said that I should come back to, and to maybe wrap this up as well, that thing is love. Love is the essence, The essence of spiritual life is love. And we've talked about this before, but the essence of love is forgiveness. What did the prodigal son's father do? Forgave his son for whatever he might have done. His arrogance, his greed, his taking his
inheritance and just wasting it, and on and on and on. He forgave him before he even did any of that. You know. And in the parable of the Bible, this is representing God and us. You know. And so the essence of spiritual life is love, and the essence of love is forgiveness. So we're already forgiven. The love is eternally there. And that's what makes home is where the heart is, because that's where the heart really is. We've just forgotten that. Yeah. So don't think there's not a place where we can go. One more point. Home is what? Home is where you can go and just let your hair down, so to speak. There's mom, there's dad. You can just go in, you can relax. You know, you don't have to play any game. You don't have to look a certain way or,
That's true.
You know, try to put some image forth that I'm cool and I'm this guy and that guy and brag about your accomplishments. You just go home and, wow, they accept you as you are. They love you. You feel that. You know that.
Yeah.
And it's where you can really feel protected, you know, and at peace. And that is the spiritual world. That's the Lord. That's, you know, the journey. That's what the whole journey is about, going home. This, oh, it just goes on and on. We could talk on and on, but there was a country and western song. You know, a truck driver, you know, truck drivers are on the road, you know, long periods of time often. If they're long haul drivers, they'll be out there a week, 2 weeks, sometime a month or more. But they're always talking about going home. So this song was about 6 days on the road, and I'm, you know, going home tonight. He's been out on the road, driving, working hard, but his mind was, okay, I'm going home. You know, that's where the wife and the kids were. I was home. Yeah. He can cut his truck off, go inside, and just relax. And that's what home is. But the spiritual world, for the spirit soul, is what we're missing. But we don't have to be out here in the cold, so to speak. Home is where warmth is. That's the hearth and home. What is hearth? That's where the fire is. That's hearth and home. It's so many things that refer back to the same point.
Exactly.
Warmth, the protection, the love, the care, the peace, the harmony, the relaxation, everything.
And what's so incredibly understandable is why in the world would I choose not to have that. and what's so amazing is that I have the opportunity then to choose that at any time. You know, it's wonderful.
Yeah. But the more we chant the mantras, the more we kind of see the value in all of this, and the more we're more inclined to begin to, at least to small degrees, choose that. Start the journey home. Breaking trail. Start the journey. You know, the longest journey starts with the first step. You know, one step at a time. And that's what it's about, spiritual journey. And you don't have to go anywhere to go on a spiritual journey. You know, you may go, you may not go. You may be very actively going places, or you may not. But you're still on the spiritual journey.
Here, right here now, you don't have to die to do it. You can do it right here now, because that's another.
You don't have to die to do it. But when you do die, your journey will continue next time. If you don't complete it, the journey continues. That's another beautiful thing. Journey continues. They say to be continued.
Okay. Wow. Okay, let's chant then.
Let's chant, yeah. Next time I want to read something about chanting. You've heard it from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I think that's very appropriate for our podcast. Okay, the mantra is the same. Gauranga Haribo.
Haribo, Goranga, Guranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Guranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Guranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Guranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga Harepo, Harepo, Goranga, Goranga Harepo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga Haribo, Harebo, Goranga, Goranga Harepo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo, 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 Goranga, Haribo, 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 Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo,
Haribol.
Goranga.
Goranga. All right. Those mantras, they'll take you home. That's a fact. So, thank you very much for joining, everybody. Ruben, thank you very much for always the podcast, Breaking Trail.
Well, thank you, Balakhilya. I really needed to hear this today as well. So, it's
I did too. You know what people might not understand is when we speak, it's like, oh, they might think, oh, he's just speaking to us. But no, we're part of the audience. We're hearing. We all need to hear this. Okay.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay online for a moment.
Okay. Should we cut?
All right, everybody. Namaste. We thank our Chintamani team here for their participation. Slava for his, what we call it, technical expertise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Balakhilya.
Namaste, everybody. Haribol.
And that's the end of this episode for today, but we hope that it's just the beginning of your journey, and feel free to check out our other episodes to keep the inspiration going. And you can always follow us by joining our email list, and you'll get updates on our upcoming episodes and events, live streams, etc. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, you also can go to our Patreon page, where you can do that, give us a small mini donation so that we keep this project running. And all of those links are available at our link tree. So yeah, or breakingtrail.life. So we're happy to have had you here today, and welcome back whenever. Remember to stay true to yourself and dare to break trail in 2022.